Make It Take It podcast on this Wednesday, February 21st edition. I'm joined by my co-hosts, Victor Kustin and Adam Oppenheim. How are you guys doing?
We're good, man.
All right.
Doing well. Ready to get this NBA season back up and running.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, our producer, Jason Maya. How are you doing?
I'm doing great.
All right. Just before we get into the show, I know our other hosts covered the All-Star game extensively on Monday, but just quickly, 30 seconds. What's your one takeaway from All-Star weekend?
I think it was interesting to see who tried and who didn't in the All-Star game. Because Dame came with something to prove. Like, there's been a lot of haters. There's been a lot of talk about how he's not shooting as well as he usually does, how he's not that lights out guy. And in the All-Star game, he came, he showed up, and he was just firing threes. He shot 26 shots, and 23 of them were threes. I mean, he really wanted that MVP.
I'm going to talk about the Rising Stars game. Team Pau Gasol lost to Team Detlef in the first round, which was the G League team, which I thought is one of the most interesting parts, is talking about some NBA prospects. You got to see Amani Bates, who's playing the Cavs G League the entire year. He actually replaced Ron Holland, who's supposed to be a top 5 pick, and also Matas Buzelis, who's going to be a top 10 pick in the NBA. I thought it was interesting to watch those guys against NBA players.
One take that I had was not that many people took it serious. It was so funny to watch, in my opinion. Except Kat and Dame did actually try, and they scored over 200 points, which I found just wild.
Yeah, they blew through the total, and Kat was just like dunking in the fourth. Like, I thought that was funny, and Tyrese, man, he didn't go out there and try to win MVP. He only shot 15 shots, but he made 11 of them. He was looking like he was going to take it, but then Dame sealed it at the end with that half-court shot.
Yeah, Dame's a historic All-Star weekend player. Unfortunately, he hasn't played that way in the regular season.
Yeah, it does seem that Dame tries more than most in these games. I think 2021, he also had a good game. I feel like I know it's just the All-Star game, but we deserve to eat a little crow for kind of crapping on Lillard being a starter the whole lead up. And then he was the MVP. But yeah, not the best game to watch. I feel like we all agree. So in terms of this show, because there haven't been any games and there aren't any until tomorrow, we're going to do kind of a look ahead, big picture podcast talking about the top 10 seeds in each conference, the playoff and play-in teams, and just go through each team. What's one big question? What's a lingering question, concern, thought that we have on all of these teams? And just to kind of, get a pulse on how we're feeling, so we don't just talk about the same contenders that we usually do. Does that sound good?
Yeah.
All right. Let's start with the East, and we'll go 10-1. So in the 10 seed right now, it's the Atlanta Hawks. And I'll kick it to you, Adam. What's your one question mark?
Well, it's for the future, and can the Atlanta Hawks build around Trae Young, or should they? Obviously, Trae Young's a defensive liability, great offensive player. He's made it to the conference finals, but are you going to build around Trae Young, or are you going to go even younger and go with like Jalen Johnson on Onyeka Okongwu?
Yeah, I agree. I think the big question is also for the future. Trae's proved that he could be that guy in the playoffs that could come down and make big shots down the stretch, but are you going to surround him with the right guys, the right fit? This team is bottom 10 defensively in the league, and I just think that's where they really struggle, especially like Trae has struggled. He struggles guarding the next point guard on the other team. So I know they brought in DeJounte to try to fix that, but I feel like it really hasn't made a difference.
All right. So I agree with all you guys. Just what's the future? DeJounte and Trae, what are we doing? Are we just going to run it back next year? And then let's move on to the Bulls, the 9 seed. I'll start with, actually, Victor, you're a Bulls fan. Let's kick it to you.
I mean, I don't understand why they didn't sell. Where's this team's future? Like, what is the long-term plan for this team? I think DeRozan is he's just there. Like, he's not going to help you win, like, when you need to in the future. Levine's injury obviously sucks, and his contract situation and all that. Why didn't Caruso get traded? Why didn't Patrick Williams get traded? Why didn't these pieces that could help other teams and get you assets in return, get traded so you could better yourself for the future. I think this team is just too stuck in the now thinking they could win with this team, and it's going to hurt them in the long run.
Yeah, it's honestly ridiculous what the Bulls are cooking up because it's a whole lot of nothing. Obviously, it's hard to trade Zach LaVine when he's injured. DeRozan doesn't have a lot of value. Vucevic's contract is horrible. The one guy I'm looking at, Alex Caruso. How many teams would like Alex Caruso in the NBA? And what, are you just going to let him walk in free agency? I don't get it. You would get at least a first-round pick for him. And, maybe you're worried about blowing it up because you traded Nikola Vucevic and gave up like a first-round pick and Wendell Carter. The first-round pick turned into Franz Wagner. So the Bulls have just not made good trades. So now it seems like they're afraid to trade.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think you could actually probably get 2 first-round picks for Caruso. I agree. I think basically he's the perfect guy for any contender, but he's the kind of guy you wouldn't want if you're the Bulls. You're kind of a middling, borderline lottery team. So don't really know what the long-term plan is. Are they ever going to sell, or are they kind of fine being subpar for the next, foreseeable future?
Stop being fine with that. I'm tired of it.
No, I agree with you. All right, so now to the actual teams that are right now in the playoffs, the 8 seed Orlando Magic. I'll just start off real quick. My question is, not so much this year, but next year. Next year, will they be good enough to potentially compete for the East? I think it's possible. They're super young. Paolo's only going to get better. Franz, probably closer to his ceiling, but we know he's very good. And I thought they could have made a move with the deadline. They still have a lot of assets. They could move somebody in the offseason or next trade deadline. I think it's entirely possible his team might be in like the Eastern Conference Finals next year. It would not shock me.
Wow. That's a very strong take. Listen, I don't hate it. They got a good young core. I think the East is very strong. I think this is a team that will make some noise in the East in the future. The conference finals, that's a pretty hot take, but I could respect it. But there's still some good teams in the East, and I think this young team's going to continue to get better. Like you said, Paolo's getting better. Franz is getting better. I think Suggs will only get better. So yeah, I think this team is looking good for the future.
I think for me, I'm going to talk about this year's playoffs and do the Magic have enough in their half-court offense to actually compete? I really don't think they do. They're a really good defensive team, but, who you going to down the stretch? Paolo Banchero's not a great jump shooter, but he's pretty good when he's driving, but, it's too easy to defend. They don't have a ton of shooting. They have Cole Anthony, but I just not sure if this team is going to be able to compete with the half-court offense.
I think that's a really good point, and that's something that's overlooked a lot because in the regular season, teams could be so good.
Right.
Teams could defend. Teams could do all this, but when the game slows down in the fourth quarter of the playoffs, who's going to step up? Who's going to not just make the shot, but set up a play, be a point guard, be the guy that could lead your team into the playoffs?
Yeah, I totally agree. Actually, Jason, you want to take it?
With what you were just saying, Victor, who would you guys want on the Magic want to take the last shot if it comes down to it? Game 7, just the first round. Who would you guys want it to come down to?
It's tough to say, but based on college, I have to say Jalen Suggs. I don't know. It might be a little bit of a hot take, but I think this guy could be the guy that could step up and be the big shot guy for the. Obviously, Paolo's going to hold the ball. You're going to have him drive, but if you need a jump shot, put the ball in Jalen Suggs' hands and see what he can do at the end of the game.
I just think Paolo, because he can rise up and hit a shot easier. For Franz, he's also not great from behind the three-point line. That would probably be my second option.
Yeah, I actually don't totally hate the Suggs pick.
Yeah.
In past years, I would have, but he's shooting 38% from 3 this year. That's above average. I feel like it's going in more often than it isn't. My pick would be boring. It'd be Paolo just because, he's kind of the guy, the most versatile scorer on the team.
I'll also toss out Cole Anthony.
Yeah, another one of those guys who's cold in college. He might make that tough shot when you need him most. So I wouldn't overlook those two guys. But obviously Paolo's the main guy. They're going to get him going to the basket somewhere. But if you got to decoy him, then you got some other good options.
Yeah, I like that Jalen Suggs one too because I watched him hit the half-court buzzer in Gonzaga. I was watching it live on my phone. I was on the couch and I saw it and I yelled. My mom yelled at me. But it was so cool to watch that. So I don't hate that take. I think I'd actually go with that one as well.
All right.
Yeah, he's got the clutch gene, as Skip Bayless would say. But let's move on to the other Florida team, the 7 seed Miami Heat. They're right now 30-25, only a half game out from avoiding the play-in. I'll kick it to you, Adam. What's your big question?
I think it's pretty obvious. Can the Heat bring back that magic that got them to the finals last year? I think it's going to be extremely difficult. Obviously, you can catch lightning in a bottle, and they did that last year. But, man, it is rough looking at their roster. You had Terry Rozier, but really the biggest advantage they have over other teams besides Butler is Eric Spoelstra. He's the best coach in the league, easily. But besides that, it's so hard to see them being one of those top teams again.
Yeah, I think that's what it comes down to is this team, like you said, Spoelstra is very good in the playoffs, defensive mindset with this team. And Jimmy Butler shows up, he knocks down big shots. They do have a little extra spark with Jamie Jaquez and Terry Rozier, but it's really just, can this team flip the switch again? Kevin Love, I feel like, has kind of lost a step. Like, he's not the same player he was as last year, but with this team, you never know. They might just turn it on in the playoffs and surprise everyone yet again.
Yeah, you guys, I mean, I have the same one. Can they kind of reclaim that postseason magic from last year? So I'll just go slightly different. Will they ever really care about the regular season again? At least
I like that.
Because I understand, obviously, if you look in results based, it's worked. They've made 2 finals with this core, a conference finals, Game 7 a couple years ago. But they really kind of just phone in the regular season. Jimmy especially will miss a lot of games, but then we see he can turn it on. So it doesn't seem to be an issue for them. But I am curious if we're ever going to get a Heat 1 seed or, like we did a couple years ago, something like that.
I think Spoelstra just doesn't care. I think he's just like, I'll take anyone in a 7-game series. I think I can outcoach you. I think that's kind of what Spoelstra's mentality is. He's like, even if we face the Celtics or Bucks or the Cavs in round 1, I'm comfortable with that because I believe in my team and I believe in my ability to coach.
Yeah, definitely one of the steadier coaches. It's funny because the knock on him, or I guess the reputation, was that he just kind of had a ton of talent with those LeBron teams, and now he's actually probably the best coach in the league. So.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so let's move on to the 6th seed Pacers. Kind of not surprising, but definitely hitting their ceiling this year, I would say. I'll go to you again, Adam. What's your big question?
It's about their offense in the playoffs. And obviously you have question marks about their defense being able to turn up, but their offensive pace is like easily the fastest in the league. In the playoffs, it's going to slow down. Are they going to be able to keep up that pace? Because a lot of the top teams play a lot slower. And if they go down to their pace, they have absolutely no chance to beat those teams. They can only win against those teams like the Sixers when Embiid's healthy, the Knicks, Bucks, Cavs, Celtics, if they're playing fast.
Yeah, I agree. Well, we talked about the half-court offense and how important that is at the end of games and playoffs. And I think also the youth is a little bit of a question here. And the inexperience, like it's Tyrese and Siakam. I know Siakam's been on a finals team, but it's their first time together in this playoff run. Miles Turner really hasn't played significant minutes in many games. And then you got Benedict Mathurin and Aaron Naismith. These guys aren't very experienced players. So I'm interested to see them grow as a team. I think the future is very bright here. I just think there's a lot of molding and building that this team still has to do.
Yeah, mine is a playoff question. Can this team win a first-round series? I don't think a lot of people are penciling that in or think they can, but they're in the 6th seed. They play the Bucks, who've been shaky all year. They're only 2 games back from the 5 where they play the Sixers or Knicks. So I definitely think it's possible, even trading away Hield, that this team might be able to be a little kind of Knicks-ish from last year, win a series against a kind of pretty good but not great playoff team.
I like that take. I think this team's dangerous just specifically because they have Tyrese Haliburton.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he's a guy that could go there. You could like that guy that we talked about at the end of games that will take the last shot, that will make the right play, that will find the open man. He's got one of the best assist-to-turnover ratios in the league. I think that if you have him on your team, you have a chance at upsetting one of those teams in the first round in a 7-game series in any season.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so now the 5 seed, Philadelphia 76ers. I feel like we're all going to have a similar one here, but I'll start with you, Adam.
Well, obviously the main question we're going to ask is Joel Embiid going to be back for the playoffs? I think there's a chance, but the problem is you're going to throw him into the fire of a playoff series. having his, meniscus repaired. But the bigger question is for the future, do you risk it? A repair instead of something that takes a ton of months for the future in one playoff run?
Yeah, it's a big question. And they went out and got Buddy Hield. I think that kind of says they do want to still compete this year. They obviously still want to compete this year. And, it's hard to say whether Embiid's going to come back. But if they do, even if he does, can this team get over the hump? Like, they haven't been able to in 5 or 6, maybe even 7 years now. Second round exits, it feels like every single time.
Yeah.
Who's going to take them to that next level? Is it going to be Buddy Hield? Is Tobias Harris finally going to step up in the playoffs? Is Kelly Oubre Jr. going to raise his game in the playoffs? Like, who's going to be the guy for this team? Because they haven't had that since the Embiid era, since the process. Who's going to get them over the hump? That's my question.
Yeah, I agree with you, Victor. I think they are trying to compete this year. I think obviously you want to have as many prime Embiid years as you can and not have it be risked by injury. But he's sneaky older than I think most people realize. He turns 30 in less than a month. Who knows how many, even with...
Seriously?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You'd think he's 27, 28.
He was out his first couple of years, yeah.
But so how many years is he really going to be at this level regardless of injuries? And like you said, the Buddy Hield trade, I think, kind of showed that. My question's related to that. Assuming he's healthy, will he even show up at a superstar level? Because he's always been well below his normal production. He's bordering on James Harden status, which is a dangerous place to be when it comes to playoff performance. So I'm curious if they actually can be the team that they've kind of been, showing that they could be in the regular season, if that actually translates to the playoffs.
I think it's kind of similar to what we were talking about. It's the half-court offense, having that guard that could make a shot, that could pass the rolling guy on a final play of the game. Maxey might be that guy, and I don't think Harden was that guy for them. I don't think Simmons was that guy for them. Maybe Maxey is. Maybe Hield is the shooter he needs on the side too. But again, this team needs to find a way to get over the hump.
Yeah, all I can point to is that Game 6 against the Celtics where, they had them down and out, and their offense was completely terrible the last 5 minutes. So they got to find a way to score in those situations.
It's a completely different game. Completely different game.
All right, now to the 4 seed, New York Knicks. One of the, even though they were kind of here last year, I'd say one of the surprises of the league in terms of how well they've sustained this. I'll just start. I'm curious, what is this team's ceiling? We saw last year they won a series that I don't think a lot of people picked them in. They, then lost to the 8 seed Heat, who, to be fair, were very hot. But can they not just win a series, can they make the conference finals? Could they compete with a Celtics kind of team, the Bucks? Obviously, we know they could probably beat the Cavs they did last year. I'm just curious, is this just a fun, Jalen Brunson's great, the Knicks have good fans story, or will they actually win 2-3 playoff series?
I could see this team making a run, but I think that there's 2 factors that it mainly depends on. One being Julius Randle and his play in the playoffs, because his play in the playoffs has either been good or outright awful. His efficiency is bad. And I think that Jalen Brunson has to take over at the end of games, and he has to figure it out for this team, because Julius Randle is not the answer at the end of games. OG Anunoby, his health is the other question. Is this guy going to be as good as he was before the injury? Is he going to help this team out defensively like we thought he would? And all of those things.
Yeah, the question for me is, what's their second option down the stretch? Teams are going to double Jalen Brunson. Randall shot 37.4% from the field in the playoffs last year, 25.8% from 3. Who else are you looking to besides Julius Randle being the number 2 option? OG Anunoby, probably not. Dante DiVincenzo, probably not. Josh Hart, probably not. Who else do they got on that team?
There's a lot of pressure on Jalen Brunson to perform for this offense.
A ridiculous amount.
Yeah.
Well, those playoff numbers, worse than I remember. I knew he got a lot of hate.
I know he had one good game. That's why I said that, because I knew he had one game where he kind of was oh, maybe Julius Randle's having a good playoffs. Well, and then
in his first playoffs, he shot 29.8% from the field in 5 games. So
his playoff performance is not good. He needs to figure that out.
Yeah, I know. All right, we can move on to a team we've discussed a lot. The Milwaukee Bucks, they're in the 3 seed despite all the kind of question marks and obviously the coach firing. I'll go to you, Adam. Biggest question mark.
Can they score a ton on the offensive end that it negates their bad defense? I don't think their defense is going to get that much better, to be honest. I think it could be, top 20 maybe in the league, but they have to score the ball. And right now, everyone imagined, this Damon Giannis unstoppable pick and roll. They just don't have that chemistry yet, and they got to build it quickly. Also, for the future, is it time to let go of Chris Middleton being that guy?
I think that's a good question. Middleton was huge in that finals run they had, but it just doesn't seem like he's that same player anymore. And I think that's why they brought in Dame, to be this guy that could close out games like Middleton was. But it doesn't make any sense why this team is bad. On paper, they look great, but something's not clicking with this team. And I think you're right. I think it's on the defensive end. They're not really locked in. And I think part of that is because of Chris Middleton's fall off, and maybe even Brook Lopez a little bit too.
I also think that them changing head coaches in the middle of the year is not helping whatsoever. And them also trading Holiday, one of their biggest defensive players, and then getting Dame, who was a defensive liability. Don't get me wrong, he might close out on games, but the way he's been playing this regular season, I don't know if he will, especially in the playoffs.
Yeah, plus Dame, like the trade-off you're going to get is, all right, he's really bad defensively, but he'll be this great offensive piece. Giannis pick and rolls, he'll space the floor. But first of all, they don't really do the Giannis pick and roll like we thought they would. And
Right.
number two, he's shooting 34% from 3. That's below average. So can he get back to kind of high 30s from 3? Can he actually be the offensive threat that kind of cancels out his defense, and therefore the team actually kind of works how we thought it would?
And I think it's very possible that just happens in the playoffs, that it just clicks for him, because he's been that guy in the playoffs his entire career. And I think another big piece for this team is Pat Bev. Trading for Pat Bev is not just an impact on the defensive end, it's an impact in the locker room. Like, some people might say that they don't want, that intense personality on their team, but I think he's that guy that needs to go in and really knock some sense into these Bucks players. Say, we got the best roster potentially in the NBA, and we're underperforming right now. Let's go out there and take this thing, because it's our thing. It's out there for the taking for us. So let's go out there and win. I think Pat Bev could be that motivator for this team.
Well, I will say that's why I mentioned Marcus Smart to the Bucks, and you guys were questioning it. That toughness.
Similar
And now you
player.
want Pat Bev? What's going on here?
Yeah, that's
But,
true.
That is valid. All right, that's enough, Bucks. Let's go to the 2-seed Cavs, who are still on a kind of a tear, even though they lost recently. I'll go to you, Adam. What's your question mark?
Can they perform in the playoffs, up to what they can do in the regular season? They just don't seem like a playoff team. They have Donovan Mitchell. Garland's fine, but then you're playing Jared Allen and Evan Mobley together. I don't know how it's going to work in the playoffs. I just can't trust this Cavs team, to be honest, at all.
Yeah, I kind of have the same feeling. Unless we get Donovan Mitchell from the bubble, then it's going to be tough for this team, because I think in the playoffs with two bigs, your team just feels slower. They feel more stagnant on offense. And I know Mobley could shoot. I know he could do all that, but it just feels more stagnant. And I think someone like a younger guy like Okoro or something like that is really going to have to make a leap in these playoffs. Or LeVert. LeVert's not playing as well as I think that he should be to his level. He could be a 20-point per game scorer, and he's only averaging 14 this year. So I think LeVert needs to step up his game in the playoffs.
Yeah, I agree. My questions are all playoffs. Can they keep this hot streak going into the postseason? Let's just round out the East with the 1-seed Celtics. Best record in the league, 43-12. Not a ton of questions, but I'll go to you, Victor. What are your thoughts?
Similar to the Bucks, or sorry, not the Bucks, the Sixers. When are you going to get over the hump? What is going to get you over the hump? You've been in this position so many different times. So many times you've had the opportunity to win. Jason Tatum, go and get yours. Jaylen Brown, go and get yours. I think these guys have Porzingis is a great piece, and this team, like the Bucks, looks amazing on paper, but can they get over the hump?
Yeah, for me, it's obviously all about the playoffs. Watching this team as a fan is very stressful in the playoffs, I will say. And it comes down to their clutch time offense. Can they perform in the clutch or not? The main difference this year, obviously they have Jrue Holiday. It's Kristaps Porzingis.
Mm-hmm.
you don't have to shoot threes all the time. It's good to get a high volume of them, but they have to go to the post-up game more. Porzingis, I think, is the most efficient post-up player in the league right now. He shoots at like 70%. They got to get him
Shea's
the
up
ball.
there too.
Yeah, you.
That's right. He is up there.
Yeah, Adam, you teed up my question pretty well. It's about Porzingis. I think this team does have what it takes to win the title. They made the finals 2 years ago. Can he stay healthy? I think that's the big one. All Celtics fans, Adam, you could probably agree, are kind of crossing their fingers
He better
every
go
time he falls.
Yeah, I mean, right now they have a 6-game lead. Just put him in bubble wrap now, wrap him up.
Yeah,
Come on now.
I wouldn't hate that idea. All right, let's transition to the West. Probably the more fun conference, a little more depth. We'll start with the 10-seed Warriors, who are doing much better right now, 8-2 in their last 10. I'll go to you, Victor. What are your thoughts?
Clay needs to figure it out. Like,
Yeah, jeez.
I don't know what's up with Clay. He's in some type of funk. We know what he could do. We know he's a great shooter, but for the Splash Bros to work, Batman needs his Robin, So I think Clay's got to figure out, and if he does, then I think this team is always scary if they're in the playoffs.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely agree about Clay, but I'm going to hit more on a young guy, Jonathan Kuminga. Does Steve Kerr trust to play him in the playoffs? That's a big question mark. Or is he going to go back to his old habits of throwing like Andrew Wiggins out there if he's struggling? You need to play Kuminga to get to where they want to be. And Kuminga just fits perfectly with the offense. I don't get it. He should be playing 30 minutes every single night.
He does fit very well.
Yeah.
And someone who also fits well is Trace Jackson Davis, our Hoosier. I think he fits really well with the Warriors. Like, he runs, and he's really good for the playoffs too, because he runs the floor, he plays defense. Like, he might not be able to knock down a shot for you, but I think he could provide some energy. I'm not saying he's going to get playoff minutes, but I think that he honestly should. Like, he's a guy that could provide a spark for this team.
A little more depth. I agree with you there. Going back to Kuminga, I don't think he helped his chances with Kerr having that public comment about playing time. But
yeah, but then he played better after.
No, I agree. I think he
Post-haircut.
should play. Yeah.
The graphics.
Yeah, and also they should play Draymond Green at the 5. I know they want to play Kevon Looney. I think their best lineup is with Draymond at the 5. Can he stay out of trouble?
Well, it always has been their best lineup. That was their death lineup, their
Mhm.
closing lineup when they were at their peak. So it might not work for the full game because, he might find himself in foul trouble. But when it's crunch time, you have to go to that lineup.
All right, let's go to the 9-seed Lakers, who are only 4 games above 500. I'll go to you, Adam. Biggest question mark.
Can Anthony Davis be consistent? Is a big one every year. He always has those monster games where it's like 30 points, 15 rebounds. Next game, 10 points, 8 rebounds. LeBron needs help. I'm not worried about LeBron showing up for the playoffs. He'll show up.
I agree with you. And I agree AD is on and off kind of sometimes and could have like a big game and then the next game kind of just fall off. But I think the question for LeBron is always his supporting cast. We know LeBron's going to have the ball a lot. We know he's going to drive and kick, do his thing. Is the supporting cast going to knock down shots around him? I think that's what matters. And are they going to get stops when it matters most? Like, this team can be strong defensively, but they've shown weaknesses. I think it's about getting stops when it matters and your role players knocking down shots for this team.
Yeah, I agree with you guys. I'm curious. My short-term question would be, can they kind of get back to where they were at the end of last season, where they struggled even more so, I'd say, at the start of the year, last year than this year. Obviously, they made the trades and then were able to get the 7 seed, win 2 series, even though they got swept, kind of compete against the Nuggets in the conference finals. This team's now the 9 seed. Will they even make the playoffs? So that'd be my question. Can they kind of bring the magic back? And then my long-term one would just be, is LeBron going to re-sign in the offseason? He's got the player option. I think it's looking less than 50% chance, probably.
I don't know. It's a lot of money, though. You don't get that from another team. That's the problem.
I think he wants to play with his son. I think that's my opinion.
Oh, yeah.
And I think like he's gonna go through the free agency process. And I just want to say one thing. That whole thing about him having a farewell tour, come on. He's
gonna have
obviously
it.
having a farewell tour. I'm not good at taking praise. Come on, LeBron. You're going to have a farewell tour.
Yeah, he had a whole media discussion about if he's going to have one. Of course he's going to have one. Like, give me a break.
Yeah.
And then going back to what you said about Bronny, if Bronny gets drafted by, let's say, a low-level team like the Grizzlies, Trailblazers, do you really think LeBron's going to take his maybe last couple of seasons to play with Bronny? Or do you think he's going to try to get on a better team or stay with the Lakers and try to get Bronny to where he's at?
It's a good point. I think it's very situational where he gets drafted too, but I could definitely see him signing like a 1-year deal with like one team that he goes to, with where Bronny goes, and it just that's being his like farewell tour. Or maybe he wants to do it with a team like the Cavs or the Lakers or the Heat or something like that. But yeah,
I'll tell you, his agent will probably tell him, don't draft Bronny. That's what they're going to say. I mean, teams do that all the time. They're going to be like, only good teams are allowed to draft him. And honestly, he's not that high of a draft prospect right now. He might sneak into the first round, but he's probably a second-round pick. And, he hasn't played that well this year. It's just
his biggest value is that he's LeBron's son.
Yeah, exactly.
He's a good player. It's just like...
I think he could be like a solid point guard, like in the league. Like, he plays defense. He could facilitate, shoot a little bit. The kid has a lot to live up to, but it's tough.
Yeah,
shoes to fill.
Living up to the king.
Yeah, exactly. I'll just say this: I can't see him like going to Portland. I think it would have to be a good team. But let's go to the eight seed Sacramento Kings. 8 games above 500. Much lower than they were last year in the standings. Adam, what's your question?
It's about De'Aaron Fox. Why is he shooting so many threes? He's shooting 3 more this year than last year. He was the clutch player of the year last year. He was so good in the mid-range, shooting 51% from the field. Now he's shooting 46.4% from the field. He's up at 38% from 3, but he's just shooting so many threes. And I don't think that's his game. He's so hard to stop in transition when he's attacking. They have other shooters on the Kings team that can really knock down the 3 ball. He's got to drive the ball more. He's unstoppable going downhill.
Yeah, my question is more kind of a big picture. Did we see this team ceiling last year? They were the 3 seed and obviously lost, kind of a heartbreaker round 1 to the Warriors. I think that might be the peak with this core. As good as Sabonis and Fox are, the West is too good. I don't see them winning a series. And then that, brings up questions of, do you keep Fox and Sabonis long-term? Do you try to do a reload or rebuild? What's the kind of long-term play?
I agree. I think this team's kind of in a weird middle spot where they have a lot of good players, solid roster, but there's just something missing. Some pieces missing to, again, like we've talked about, put them over the top. And I agree with you. I think Fox is amazing at driving, and I think he should be driving more. Like Sabonis is leading this team in assists by 3 assists. Fox is the point guard, and he's taking all these threes. I get he's averaging 27 a game, but you got Malik Monk, you got Harrison Barnes, you got Kevin Huerter, you got guys around you. Use them. Keegan Murray as well. These are all great shooters. So,
yeah, let's go to the 7 seed Mavericks. I'll just start real quick. My question is Luka happy with the current situation here, and will he remain that way? He's probably the number 1 pick for superstar that could become unhappy and ask out and just have a massive bidding war or like a free agent decision type thing. Is he happy or is he fine with how it's going? And if he is, when will that kind of change for him?
I think it's always difficult to tell with Luka because he's such an upbeat, just always happy type of guy. And he doesn't just seem like a diva, like a guy that would ask out or a guy that would ask for a trade or complain. But this roster sucks. It straight up sucks. Your 4th leading scorer is Daniel Gafford. It's a recipe for disaster. You don't have any help for Luka. Kyrie's, I don't think, is a good counterpart for him. He needs a true big, a guy that could roll the hoop, get his own, someone that could help play in the post and space the floor more for Luka.
For me, for the Mavericks, can a secondary ball handler actually work next to Luka? Because it seems like they're always or Mark Cuban is trying to get someone like Kyrie next to Luka who wants to handle the ball, but it seems like it works better when it's in Luka's hand all the time because he doesn't really move off the ball. So that's my question for them.
Yeah, sorry. Luka seems similar to what LeBron was really, really early in his career, where he's a guy that demands the rock, a guy
Mhm.
that needs the ball in his hands. He's going to either drive, take that step back, or he's going to kick out almost every single possession. His usage is going to be up. And I think, like LeBron, it took him a little bit to develop playing with another guard like Kyrie. And LeBron had bigs early in his career, and I think that's something that Luka could use.
All right, let's go to the 6th seed Pelicans. Adam, what's your question?
Zion. He's obviously the number one option on that team. Can he stay in shape and perform for the playoffs? Also, his bag is pretty empty, to be honest. If you watch him play, he just goes to his left hand every time, has, a spin move, has no jump shot. It's too predictable in the playoffs. So, what other options do the Pelicans have? I mean, not a ton else.
I agree. We talked about the importance of jump shooting and half-court offense in the playoffs. This team's fun. They have good pieces like Trey Murphy. Valanciunas gives them good minutes. But I think Brandon Ingram needs to be that guy. He needs to step up, and he needs to be the guy to close out games for them, because I doubt it's going to be Zion in the post, because he's just going to get doubled, get flustered, lose the ball. It happens every time in the playoffs. You see it with these bigs that they just can't close out games. You need a wing, you need a guard, a guy that could get his own shot in the mid-range to close out a game.
All right, you guys hit all my points. They're all Zion based. So tied with the Pelicans, but technically above them in the standings at the 5 seed is the Phoenix Suns. I feel like we're all going to have similar ones, but I'll start with you, Adam.
Supporting cast.
Mhm.
Who's going to be the third option? And guess what? That's including Bradley Beal. He should be the third option. He has to be the third option. You scored, 30 points a game a couple years ago. They just have no one else, really. I mean, they have Grayson Allen who could shoot the ball a little bit, but they have no one else who you actually want to play in the playoffs. I don't want to hear about, Drew Eubanks or Yusuf Nurkic or Royce O'Neal. No.
Well, you want to hear about Josh Okogie?
No, I don't. No
No.
offensive shot.
I completely agree with you. This team has very, very, very little depth, and it's going to hurt them in the playoffs. KD and D-Book are going to have to carry the load. Nurkic just honestly disappointed me this year. I thought he would honestly be a slight
I don't like
upgrade
him.
from Aiden. I thought he would be a slight upgrade, but he's honestly been a downgrade. So, it's all about the supporting cast for this team and who's going to step up, who's going to be that campaign, who's going to be that Jay Crowder when they went on that run against the Bucks.
Yeah, I agree with you guys. It's all depth questions for me. And moving on to the kind of top tier of the West, the 4 seed defending champ Denver Nuggets. I'll just say my piece right now. I don't really have any questions about them. No matter what they do, I will trust them and Jokic in the playoffs. I probably would pick them now to make the finals and maybe win the title. I don't really care that they're the 4 seed. Obviously, they have a great home court, but I don't really have a question mark with this team.
I can agree with that. I think that this team is one of the more steady, consistent teams in the league. We know what they do. Obviously, they're the defending champion. They have their shooters. They have their athletes, Michael Porter Jr., Aaron Gordon. But is Christian Braun going to step up like he did in the playoffs again? I think that's kind of not the biggest X factor, but definitely a big X factor for them, because he played great in the playoffs last year as a rookie. And this year he's only averaging 7. And I feel like he was scoring double digits almost in every playoff game. So if he could have kind of a similar playoff run to what he had last year, this team's destined for another finals appearance.
Yeah, I think besides Murray staying healthy, the biggest question is they need one other piece to step up. Christian Braun, you mentioned. Peyton Watson has been pretty solid this year. One of those two guys has to step up, and I think they can make another deep run, no doubt about it.
All right, to the 3 seed Clippers. I think we're all going to probably have the same question here, but I'll go with you, Adam.
James Harden. Will he show up in the playoffs? And the thing is, it's not like the Clippers want to defer to Paul George and Kawhi Leonard. The Clippers look their best when James Harden's running the offense. Do you want Paul George running the offense and James Harden playing off the ball? No, you'd rather James Harden be on the bench because he plays no defense.
I completely agree with you. And I agree that you want James. I think you want James Harden on the floor because, like you said, he's running their offense the best. I know he doesn't play great defense, but if he's running their offense, it takes so much pressure off of Kawhi and Paul George because we know what they could do defensively. So these guys could really lock in on the defensive end, kind of let James Harden take control on the offensive end. And I really like what they're doing with Westbrook. Like, he's just cutting to the hoop. He's not like holding the ball so much. He's just being a good basketball player and like not trying to be like the center of attention on the team like he usually is. So I think with the extra kind of addition of offense with Harden and Norman Powell and things like that, Kawhi and Paul George might have more energy for later in the game when they have to close it out. Like, they have three very, very solid options to close out games in Kawhi, Paul George, and James Harden.
And speaking with that, I like the Clippers as championship contenders. I know it's I wouldn't say really a hot take now, just because they've been doing really well as a big three together. But I personally really like the Clippers as a championship contenders.
No, I agree. After the Harden trade, I would have called you crazy if you said they'd be in this position in late February. But I definitely think they are. My question is just health. Everyone kind of has it. Kawhi, Paul George, even Harden, not the most durable guys. So if one goes down, they could have trouble in the playoffs, obviously. All right, 2 teams left. We have the 2 seed OKC Thunder. I'll go to you, Victor. What's your question?
Is the youth going to step up? This team, they've been great all year. They have amazing talent, but none of these guys are proven. Like, the most proven guy on this team other than SGA is Lou Dort. Like he had that one good little kind of playing game run, but is this team going to be as good as they are in the regular season in the playoffs? And I think that they have that guy in Shea that could close out games for them and be that catalyst. But will the other guys knock down their shots? Because Lou Dort's really improved as a shooter over these years, but will he be that same guy in the playoffs?
Yeah, I think for the Thunder, it's about rebounding. Can they rebound the ball? Those second chance points just kill you in the playoffs, and I think that could be part of it. That and the youth, obviously.
Yep, you guys nailed mine. Rebounding. Can they rebound, and are they too young? All right, last team, the 1 seed Minnesota Timberwolves. Adam, what's your question?
It's their half-court offense late in games. It looks terrible, to be honest. Like, whose hands do you want on? Karl-Anthony Towns is going to force a shot. Edwards, who's also going to try to force a shot. They need someone else going downhill. Teams are going to lay off the Jaden McDaniels or Nickeil Alexander-Walker and make them hit shots. Their late-game offense just worries me so much, and that's why I could easily see them losing in the first round.
I agree. I think it's very similar to kind of the Cavs, like we talked earlier. Having 2 bigs is very difficult. Even when one shoots, like Towns is a great shooter, Mobley is a good shooter. Even when one of them shoots, it still feels like offense gets stagnant in the half court because of how big they are and how slow they move. So where is this team? Yes, Anthony Edwards can close out game, but where is this team going to go in the half court offense when it matters most? And is Cat going to get exploited on defense in the playoffs? Like, are they going to, whoever's guarding Gobert, they're going to stick him on the outside and then be like, you got to go, Gobert's got to stay on the outside and then expose Cat in the paint. I think that could be a big problem for this team as well.
Yeah, you guys make great points. Mine is the same point I think I make every podcast that the Timberwolves come up, but it's just their maturity. They're still very young. We saw, I think, 2 years ago against the Grizzlies, they kind of threw away a potential series win. They've had questionable moments during the season. Towns, you question maturity. Even Edwards, Jaden McDaniels last year with the punching the wall. Rudy Gobert, Kyle Anderson fight. Seems like Mike Conley might be the only adult on the team.
I was just gonna say, like, he's been very good for them, and that's a good extension for them. Good to see him back playing well again.
Absolutely. So just curious if they kind of have enough maturity for come playoff time. All right, we're going to do this really at the buzzer. We have about a minute left. We're just going to preview what we think is the best game of the next few days. It's tomorrow night on TNT at 8 Eastern, Clippers at Thunder. Adam, what's your kind of big thing you're looking forward to?
Just the Thunder on national television. How do they perform at that stage against a Clippers team that is really quite talented? Yeah, I'm more looking at the Thunder. I'm not too worried about the Clippers.
I agree. I'm really excited for this game because, like you said, the Clippers have a lot of proven players and the Thunder don't. I'm curious to see how they guard SGA, how SGA manages having all those great defenders on the floor against him at the same time, and also how Chet kind of matches up against this team. So yeah.
Yeah, I'll just say I'm curious if this is a potential second round or conference finals matchup. Right now they're the 2 and 3 seed, but that could fluctuate. With that
I would
top 4.
absolutely love to see this matchup,
Same.
and I think you guys know why. Because of the Shea trade.
Oh yeah,
Because
that's
the
true.
Clippers Thunder Shea
Oh,
trade.
yeah.
And
I
Paul
would
George.
love to see this matchup because of that trade.
Yeah,
And I'm calling it the Shea trade,
The
by the
Shea
way,
trade.
not the Paul George.
Oh, I thought you were going to call it the Danilo Gallinari trade.
yeah. But I totally agree with you. These would be some fun teams to watch in the playoffs. That's going to do it for us here with the Make It Take It podcast on this Wednesday, February 21st. We got finally some NBA games back this week and weekend, so we're excited. Take care.
Thank you guys. Bye.